Alright, what's going on, guys? Welcome to my channel. No, I haven't made a video in a while. As you know, I recently sold my car, sold my motorcycle, but nonetheless, I'm still making content out here. I love doing it. So recently, I've been doing some work on one of our cars, Nissan Murano. It's more of a beater car now, but it needed new front brakes and it needed a new CV axle. You can just replace the boot, but in this situation, these axles were old already and needed to be replaced. So I decided to just change the whole thing out. So as you can see here, you know, the car's kind of rusty, but not too bad. As you can see, there's grease everywhere. Even on the side of the plastic, you can see it's dripping. And if you drive around like this for a while, sand, dirt will get in the boot and it will damage it a lot more. So it's best to change it out as soon as possible. Make sure you always jack up your car safely. Here I put 2 jack stands just in case, and as well as the jack, probably overkill, but I needed to use the other one and later on anyway. So the first thing you want to do is take off the brake line off of the strut mount, and you just want to take that clip off that I just showed you, and then it should just slide right out, and as well as the ABS line right there and right here as well. So this ABS line goes into the steering knuckle, and it's also within that cable there's also an all-wheel drive traction control sensor. So make sure you don't break those, right? Those are pretty sensitive. You won't have ABS working or functioning in that wheel, and same with your traction control and all-wheel drive system. So make sure you are careful when you do that. Here on the bottom, you're gonna want to take this tie rod off. So make sure you lubricate it, put some super lubricant AWD in there. It should come off a lot easier. Same with the other bolts, the strut. It'll make it 100 times easier to take off, trust me. Make sure you get that nice and deep in there. Get all those bolts, even on the bottom. As you can see here, I don't know if you could tell, but the back of the rotor was pretty rusty, so I didn't really include it in the video, but I actually ended up changing the rotors and pads as well in the front, just because it needed it really badly. So in my opinion, I usually always do it manually with a ratchet, but in this case I was trying it out with the impact gun, and to be honest, it worked out a lot better. As you can see here, I mean, I didn't have to wrestle with it or anything. If you have one of these impact guns, it makes your life 100 times easier. And you know, once you take this nut out, the castle nut, you can just hammer the tie rod right off. You can just hammer the side of the steering knuckle where the tie rod holds or mounts to, and it should just pop right out. Next thing you want to do is take off the axle nut. So this one, you're definitely going to need either a really long breaker bar or an impact gun, because these things are really snug in there. From factory, they have a high impact, they have a high torque spec rating. So make sure you know, it's easier with a gun, but totally doable with a nice breaker bar. So yeah, make sure you get that pin out of there. And then once you get that out, I mean, it should be pretty easy to get out. What I did is just use the impact gun, and it made it a lot easier. So as you can see here, I loosened it with the impact wrench. See, it looked pretty easy. It won't be as easy if you do it by hand. Next, you want to take the strut bolts out. So you're gonna need a wrench on one side, I believe it was a 22, and on the other side a 17. So I just used my impact gun again, made it so much easier, but totally doable by hand. Like I said, you just want to, if you're using a gun, just make sure to do it slowly. Don't just force it. You don't want to strip the bolt or the nut, and you also don't want to break anything. The worst thing that can happen is the bolt literally snaps in half, and that's usually sometimes due to so much heat and expanding of the metal that it just ends up giving out once you twist it. So in this case, I was able to do it gently and get both of them loose. So once you get that nut out, the bolt should just come out. You can tap it out with a hammer. You may want to also continue to turn it and loosen it to unscrew it out of that hole, but initially just use the hammer to tap it out a little, and then it should just come out nicely. that WD-40 super lubricant should have came in handy and helped us out here. But so in this case, everything is pretty much loose, and you should just be able to tap the axle out in the center. Although I will say this really did not work for me. This is the part where I had the most trouble. It actually would not just come out as easy as it may seem, like I was trying to attempt in this clip right here. So no matter how hard I would hammer it, you know, I hammered it, I took the whole thing out. You know, what I ended up doing is I actually took the whole steering knuckle out. You know, I unplugged the ABS sensor, I unplugged the rest of the bottom lower control arm, I unplugged everything, the caliper, and I just took the whole steering knuckle out along with the steering axle. So it was just the steering axle, the CV axle attached to the steering knuckle, and then those are the two pieces that I had. So you know, that was a big pain. I mean, I just had those two things. I was like, all right, I need to either get the steering knuckle out of this CV axle or just get a whole new steering knuckle and then put the new axle I had onto the new steering knuckle. But that didn't work out. So what I did is I actually took it to a machine shop. Luckily my dad works at one, so I just took it there. He's got a nice hydraulic press, and he had to apply a bunch of pressure in that CV axle where you see me hammering at, to separate it from the steering knuckle. Took a lot of force, so it was not easy. Just keep that in mind. It really won't come out easy. I mean, unless yours is a newer car, but this is a 06 Murano. So the video stops here. I apologize for not filming the rest of the clips of me putting it back together. I was just so fed up of trying to get that steering knuckle out that, you know, after I took it to the machine shop, I was just in the mission to get it back together. But I will say, after you get that out, putting the new one is super simple. You just slip it into the transmission, and then you put the steering knuckle back onto the lower control arm. If you didn't, I mean, that is if you took it off, and then you slide it back into the steering knuckle and put the tie rod back in, put the strut back on, those two bolts. Make sure they're snug to torque spec. Make sure you snug the axle bolt right in between the rotor, and as well as the brake line and the ABS line. So make sure those are all good and torque to spec. And that's pretty much it. I mean, take it for a drive around the block, make sure it's good. But anyway, that's the video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and I hope if you try to attempt this job that you succeed and it's not a big pain for you, at least not as much of a pain as it was for me. So thank you so much. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a like, subscribe, and I will talk to you guys at another time. Thank you.